You'll see here is the footage from National Mall of the United Nations in New York. The first part of the footage is of what's called the mission briefing, where we got a chance to visit with the French mission themselves and invite them to Kansas, by the way. They were really excellent. Did you want to add anything there?
So you actually meet the delegates from France, the
Yes.
UN delegates from France?
Met the diplomats themselves.
That must be quite an honor. Good, and we'll talk through the video here, but let's specifically focus in on what you just went through there in New York City. What are the first tasks that you do? Meet the delegation. What else do you do, Stephanie?
Well, we had opening sessions where there's a guest speaker. We get related to our chair, whoever's running our committee, and eventually go to our committee where a lot of the debate goes on, and we give our speeches and caucusing, which is a big factor during the conference, which entails small group negotiating discussions and such to eventually formulate resolutions that can be voted upon by the committee.
Okay, now who's in this committee?
Well, there are delegates and delegations from all over the country and even different countries in this particular conference. We attended in New York. So roughly there are about 192 countries in the United Nations. And so some of the bigger committees had roughly 192 people at least.
Okay, and they're representing all the countries then?
Yes.
Okay. And is there anybody in charge of these committees? You all just walk in this big room?
Well, we do have, like I said earlier, our chair, our co-chair, and they're the ones, the staff, for example, they're in charge of the procedures and rules and just regulating the flow of debate, basically.
Brian, how long is this competition, this one in particular?
This is a whole week in New York, and one of the nice events about New York is, since the United Nations is there, we get to visit the United Nations and meet with the diplomats themselves. And one of the key elements is touring the United Nations itself. I think until students actually see it and see what it represents, which is basically peace in the world, they don't really. It doesn't really click with them sometimes until they actually see the building. Also entailing working with other schools. I mean, I think it's a great opportunity. How often do you get the opportunity to work with a number of students from different colleges and universities? So one of the interesting and fun aspects of the conference is meeting students from around the world and from around the country, and after a while they don't really care where you're from as long as you are knowledgeable on the issue. And then hopefully they come to, one of the arts is trying to figure out how to persuade others that your position is tenable or workable with others. And you try to search out others who are likewise. And then you try to build towards what's called resolutions to the situations and come to some sort of compromise, if not consensus, on issues. Because the United Nations itself, there's something called sovereignty, and you cannot make states, countries, do things very well because they're states. They don't want to spend the money, they don't want to commit resources or personnel. So one thing that the United Nations has done over the years is try to let the states agree in principles, because if the assumption is if you get them to agree in principle, then you can make sure that they live up to those principles. Okay, and that makes a very interesting learning situation if you can put the students into the intersubjective or interpersonal type experience, and that's where the learning takes place.
Yeah, you're polishing a lot of negotiating skills, it sounds like. Stephanie, ever run into anybody with a hard head and it was virtually impossible to convince?
Off and on, yes. During some conferences I've been to in the past, but there are some delegates like that, and there's nothing I can do about it. But negotiate with somebody else that's more, less, more open-minded, more willing to, hear what other people have to say. And so that's what I've experienced in the past.
Yeah, exactly. But it would be a wonderful experience to meet so many different kinds of people from all over.
Yes.
Now, something that intrigues me, you mentioned here that you were working with colleges and universities also. So the community colleges and the universities are working together or against one another, or both involved in the project?
At such a big conference, there's not that many community colleges. There are some, and we're proud that we're one of the top ones.
Absolutely.
But having said that, our students have excelled recently. You'll notice on the video that 3 of the committees were actually chaired by students from Johnson County Community College. So I thought that was an honor in itself that they are willing to be chosen to run these big meetings in New York. So they're confident enough to do that. And I think that says a lot about Johnson County and to the community itself.
Absolutely. Yeah, I noticed the position paper. The position paper was written with delegates from Wichita State University. How did that union occur?
Well, I know Dr. Wright's fairly good friends with the advisor there, and just being, having not such a big team, we decided to collaborate, and they're really great at, helping each other out and cooperating to achieve what we achieved at the National Monument Conference.
Mm-hmm. Is that done often, or is that rather rare?
It's tough to do only because, dealing with 2 different groups, but at the same time, Wichita was sort of easy since they did go to St. Louis with us, so we went together to St. Louis, and so the students were able to at least mix together and get to know each other.